and today we're gonna read some more stories from the Reddit subreddit Let's Not Meet. Alright, so let's get started. This is the first one. It's called Waiter Bartender Kept Trying to Get Me to Leave in a Cab. This was posted 17 days ago by Summer Hugs. And my computer's over on this side, so if I'm looking over there, that's why. Okay, so this happened a few years ago. It was after an Oktoberfest, and me and my boyfriend, now fiance, had decided to split from our group because they kept walking around like looking for a house party that didn't seem to exist. We decided to go into a sports bar to eat and sober up before heading home. Found a seat outside on the enclosed patio area, ordered some wings and water. Boyfriend passed out at the table. Obviously, I was going to be driving home since I had barely had anything to drink. Our waiter comes out to give us drinks and sees my boyfriend passed out. Our conversation starts out seemingly innocent but turned creepy. It went something like, waiter says, "Hey, is he okay?" Me, "Yeah, he's fine, just drank a bit too much." Waiter says, "Are you okay? Do you need to leave? I can let him know you headed out when he wakes up." "Oh no, I'm okay, he's my boyfriend. He really just drank too much. Didn't want him puking in the car, so I want to get some food into him." Waiter nods and walks away. A few minutes later, comes back out to me. Waiter says, "Hey, are you sure you don't want to head out? I called you a cab. They'll be here shortly. Don't worry about the tab." "No, seriously, I'm fine. We just want to eat and head home. Our car isn't far from here." "Are you sure? I already called them. You don't have to pay them or anything, just head home." Then I said, "I'm really okay. Thank you." The waiter walks away again, and at this point I'm kind of creeped out, and I tried to wake up my boyfriend. He opened his eyes and saw our food hadn't arrived yet and set his head back down. A minute or two later, the same waiter comes out and essentially has the same conversation with me about leaving in a cab. He called for me. Thankfully, another staff comes out in the middle of us talking to give us our wings. I quickly moved to wake up my boyfriend, and the waiter just takes off. We ate and left. The next day, I told my boyfriend about what happened, and while he agreed it was odd, he didn't think the waiter had any ill intention. I don't care to know what his thought process was. If he had genuine concern for me, he definitely went about it in the most creepy way possible. I refuse to go back to that bar. That is incredibly sketchy. Like, you are with somebody, why would you need a cab? It gives me shivers. Like, I don't know, anything can happen, right? Alrighty. So here's the next one. It's called A Stranger in Canada. When I was 18, my boyfriend, Jake, 21, and I spontaneously decided to go to Canada to go bar hopping. It was a few hours away from our home, so we made the trip. After getting settled in the hotel, we went to the first bar. We had a drink, then went in search of a new bar. Jake and I were chatting and walking when a man in a big, puffy coat stopped and introduced himself as Ian. He noticed we were speaking English and invited us to go bar hopping with him. Turned out he lived just a few hours from where we lived. After a few bars, we met up with two of his friends and went to the strip club. Ian paid our cover charge and drinks with a huge wad of cash. I had never seen that much before. We started talking about weed, and Ian invited us to the hotel room to smoke. I had had way too much to drink at that point, off being sick in the bathroom after one puff. Thankfully, Jake wasn't that drunk, and we both eventually made our way back to the hotel. What a crazy night. The next morning, after a hangover breakfast, we were walking to our car to leave, when all of a sudden Ian and his friends started calling our names. We all remarked how strange it was to run into each other again. Ian invited us all for a smoke at his friend's house. It was a shady-looking, run-down apartment. We smoke, and somehow the topic turned to how Ian makes so much money. Without directly saying it, I could tell he was into drug smuggling, possibly over the border. Ian suggested that I could make some good money doing the same. My heart dropped, and I immediately felt uncomfortable, unsafe. I needed to get out of that apartment, that city, that country. Jake looked over and saw how freaked out I was. We casually played it off. Yeah, okay, like he was joking, but Ian's friends started nodding their heads and suggesting where I can hide it. Jake gave Ian his real phone number. Why? I don't know. And we said our goodbyes as we had a long drive home. Jake is driving, and shortly after we take off, we see Ian's car behind us. Very weird. We make a few turns, got a little lost, and he was still there. Jake made a few more erratic turns just to lose him. We both did not have a good feeling about Ian anymore. Finally, we made it across the border. No Ian in sight. It was a weird drive home. A week or two later, Ian called up Jake on the phone. I have no clue what was said, but I know we never picked up a call from him again. Maybe it was a close call, maybe not, but I got that deep gut sinking feeling that something bad was going to happen if we were in Ian's presence any longer. Listen to your gut feelings. That sounds terrifying. Sorry, this was by Why So Serious 37912. Yeah, that's super creepy. So, I'm glad you guys made it out okay, out of that situation. So, okay, on to the next one. Stalker from the Dark. This is by Cellist Concubine. Posted 14 days ago. I was reminded of him just last week. After almost 5 years of not hearing from him, I saw him again last week. I will try my best to summarize this nightmare. Some things to note, which are important to the story. It happened in 2017, and during that time, we went a whole year without neighbors, having neighbors on either side. So basically, we're cramped between two houses. The streetlight in our lot had broken, and despite multiple reports to the council to fix it, nobody did. One evening, my family went out for groceries. I was left home alone. The gate was still wide open when they left, because the water pipe was located outside. I used it all the time because back then I had rabbits, so I used to fill their water bowls. That day was no different. The sun was already setting by the time I went out to fill the bowls, feed the rabbits, and then lock the gate. I was literally 5 minutes after I locked the gate that someone was outside. Since the sun was already low on the horizon, and with the street light broken, I can barely see his face. He was outside with a fan, shouting for my attention. He said something about his company sending him over to do some property surveillance. It was suspicious, all right, so I ignored him and went inside. That's right, good job. Later on, when the night got dark, my family still hadn't returned. I was inside watching Chicken Little. Oh my god, I used to watch that so many times when I was younger. When I heard some commotion outside, I didn't directly look at it, but I stole some glances and saw someone outside, like literally in front of my gate. He was shouting for my attention again, and guess who it was? Yup, the guy from before. I recognized his voice and again paid him no attention. After a seemingly long few minutes, it got quiet outside. I took another peek out and holy shit, he was attempting to climb into my house. I was so shocked that I couldn't move, but luckily that time we had a dog named Buck, who passed away not long after. Bless his soul. He was probably napping in one of his hiding spots and sensed some presence. As soon as the guy saw Buck coming at him, he stopped climbing and rode away on his bike. No more van. That was that. But ever since then, I kept seeing him still. How do I know it was him when I can't even see his face in the first place? Well, because after that particular incident, Every now and then there was always someone hanging literally outside our gate with his bike. He was always making this weird sound too, like when you purse and smack your lips. And every time I reported it to my dad, the guy would always ride away as soon as he saw my dad checking. One time I was at the backyard collecting my laundry. If you stand on the left side of my gate, but facing in, you can see the area in our backyard where we wash and dry our laundry. And he was standing right there, making those weird sounds again, which drew my attention. I yelled for my dad, and again, once he saw my dad, he booked it out of there. This had been going on for almost a month. Well, while he hadn't actually posed as a threat, it was enough for me to feel uncomfortable and unsafe to even want to go out at night by myself. Understandable. Oh, but it got worse. My room is on the outer side of the house, so I basically have a window that faces the front of the house. But my room is situated on the right side of the house if you're looking at my house. So my direct view is the overgrown bushes covering the fence. If I peek my head out the window and look to the right, I can clearly see the gate. One night, I was in my room doing some work on my desk. The window was to my left, and I left it open as always. I always like the night breeze. I don't remember how long I was working for, but then all of a sudden, I felt this dread washing over me. It's like I wasn't safe in the comfort of my room anymore, like I was being watched. I looked out the window and tried to see in the dark, and there he was. I knew it was him. Somehow he managed to squeeze in between the bushes and was hanging on to the fence. He saw me. I can feel him smiling at me. And then he made those awful lip-smacking sounds again. Nope, I booked the fuck out of there like lightning. Again, I reported to my dad, and again, he rode out of there before we can catch him in the act. Sometimes my dad and sister thought I was imagining stuff because when they kept their eyes outside, they saw nothing. But I was the one who saw him every time. But I know for a fact that it's real. He's real. And it's the same person every time. This continued on for another month. So 2 months in total. He'd come and taunt me with his lip-smacking skill. This is like some ASMR, but like in a perverse way, I guess. And rode away before my dad or sister can get a good look at him. And then one day, he stopped coming. And I haven't seen and heard his lip-smacking sounds anymore. That is, until last week. I was home alone again. My sister was caught up at work, and my dad left to pick up my brother from his workplace. I was in the living room watching the TV when I heard that awfully familiar lip-smacking sound. At this point, our street light is still broken. We've installed some fence lights, but this bastard hid in the dark where the light was too faint to reach. He was out there with his bike again, only this time I heard him giggle. I've never heard him giggle before, and no, this isn't the cute kind of giggle. It sounded malicious. I tried my hardest to ignore him, to not pay him any attention, but he was still out there making all kinds of noises. Over a year ago, we got a new dog, Gibbs. He was a rescued stray. He must have heard him too. As soon as the guy we saw Gibbs coming at him, he rode away. Again, that was last week. 5 years ago, he terrified me to the point where I was so afraid of being outside on my own at night, even if I were to just pick up laundry. Sometimes at night, I can't even sleep without checking every corner of the house just to make sure he's not there. And for a short period, I slept with the lights on, and even though I didn't exactly do anything physically threatening, him playing psycho tricks over a long period on me is enough to make me feel unsafe in my own house, which makes sense to me. Right on. Just when he was finally out of my head, he came back. Worse still. I have never ever seen his face, but I think he has seen mine. I hope I won't ever have to see his face. His presence alone is malicious as it is. Alright, so the next one is 10 and 12-year-old girls almost got kidnapped. Sorry. It's by Disaurus. So this happened to my friend and I almost 2 decades ago, but I'm only realizing the severity of it now that I remembered it. We were like 10 and 12. I was 12, she was 10. Both girls. We snuck out in the middle of the night on a sleepover because we had a dumb urge to get some cola. And during that time, the only store that was working nights was a small liquor store, 30-minute walk away from where our house was. Interesting. It was next to a train station, which was a sketch place overall, full of drunks and the like. But us being so young, we didn't know that, and we just went. The walk to the place was fine, quiet as midnights are in a small town, but shortly after we started walking back, we noticed a car going by, the only car at that time, so we took notice. At first we didn't think much of it, but then we noticed it drive past us again, and a couple minutes later, again. So we became alert and started walking faster. We were walking on the main street, which was pretty lit, so I assume now that the only reason nothing happened was because the person driving wanted to get us in a darker place. He took a turn towards a darker street once, trying to get ahead of us, but as we walked past it, he drove out of it and started following us. The moment we reached the street where we had to turn to our house, we took a sidewalk shortcut and we ran. The shortcut didn't allow the car to drive after us straight away, and instead, he had to drive slightly straight, then right, and then right again into our street. And lucky the shortcut existed because at that time, the street had no light, absolutely none. But we noticed the car did actually start turning to our street. And that's how we confirmed it was actually following us. Good thing the house was very close by. The time he turned to our street, so he couldn't drive to us fast enough. But my God, when I think of it now, I'm even more frightened than I was then, because I know what could have happened since I understand it more. We could have been kidnapped or molested or even killed. Who knows? At that time, my friend and I forgot about the situation the very next day because we didn't realize what could have been. I wish I was smart enough back then to have remembered the plate numbers or something. I hope that person didn't hurt anyone in that town. I now feel lucky nothing happened to us, and my hometown is now a completely different light for me since the realization. Also, my friend and I were out past midnight with no supervision when we were 10 and 12 years old. The suspicious car followed us around. Could have been potentially ended bad, but it didn't. Could have potentially ended bad, but it didn't. I mean, that is terrifying, and I'm glad nothing happened, but things do happen, and it can happen anywhere. Like, literally anywhere. So, it's always good to be smart. And I'm glad you guys got away. There's a lot of weirdos out there. It could be your neighbor, it could be anybody. So, I'm glad to hear that you were smart about it. And I think when you're that age, you just don't know any better, you know? And you can only think about what you could have done differently now because you're an adult and you know there are consequences and you know that these types of things can happen. But when you're little, you don't know that because you don't have any life experience. So, alrighty, well, that is the end of that story.